Hello everyone. Today we will speak about universal styling. My name is Jacek Pudysz. I'm a CTO and co-founder at CodeMask. We are a team of developers focused on JavaScript, TypeScript, React Native and Node.js, so only JavaScript. You can also find me on Twitter and GitHub with the same handle. And I'm also an author of blog, React Native Crossroads, where you can explore some kind of native side of React Native, so give it a try. But today, let's talk about Unistyles. Last time we met here, it was like past year, 9th of November, and Kacper introduced Unistyles. It was like sneak peek of the GSI, of C++, there is no React context, and so on. But at the time, the stable version was 1.1.5, so it was far before the 2.0 stable. And a lot has changed. So the old stack was simple, JavaScript, TypeScript. There is also some kind of hooks from React Native, like use window dimensions, and that's all. And I was wondering, what if I will destroy the connection with React Native? I added C++, of course, and Java native interface, JSI. I connected it to Kotlin, to Objective-C++, and then I was able to call device APIs. Yeah, that was the best stack ever, yeah? But people have asked, why? Why I can't run it in Expo Why can it run a Chrome debugger? Why? Because for me, Unistyles is like a mountain. On the peak, you have like what I can support, what can't be done is here. But for me, I'm focusing on what can be done. And with the new architecture, I can do more. But before we will dive deep into Unistyles, let's take a look on the default way of styling. So you have style sheet, yeah? You can simply import style sheet from React Native. You can pass object with your styles, and that's all. It works. Of course, you can pass it to view, text, button, whatever you have. But what about color management? Here I hard-coded the colors. What about dark mode support? What about landscape mode? What about save area insets? You need to install one more package. You need to add one more hook. What about bigger screens? For example, you need to target web or desktop. What about variants? How to create multiple variants of typography, of buttons? What about passing dynamic values from JSX? It's not possible with the style sheet. And finally, what about the accessibility? Forgotten by many developers, and much, much more. You may feel like this, because with style sheet, it's doable, but it's hard. So let's jump quickly into every topic. With Unistyles, you can define your theme. Your theme is just an object. You can accept, you can put here anything, so it accepts everything. And then you can simply import Unistyles, import your theme you created, like I said, any object. And then optionally, if you use TypeScript, I bet you do, you need to create a type and override library type. It guarantees you perfect IntelliSense across all your components. Finally, just register your theme, and that's all. So let's move back to the previous example. We have the same component, but right now, we are using create style sheet. Create style sheet accepts style sheet. If you want, you can use the same style sheet like previously. But if you pass a function, I will automatically inject a theme. Whatever you put there, it's available for you. So you can remove hard-coded colors. And of course, finally, you need to add hook. It glues everything together, yeah? There is no context. I didn't add any provider. There is perfect type inferring. There was no issue about TypeScript whatsoever in version 2.0. You can use your own components, and that was the most important part for me. There is no like Unistyles view, Unistyles text, and so on. You are using React Native components. There is only small performance overhead. You can inject functions, I will show it later, and there is auto-memoization. You don't need to worry about it. Okay, what about dark mode support? It's also easy. Just create a second theme, dark theme, register it with a unique name dark, add it to your themes. You can have as many themes as you want, and you can enable adaptive themes. Adaptive themes means let Unistyles manage your themes by looking at device color scheme. And with that, with no additional line of code, you have auto support for dark mode. Okay, what about safe area insets and context? Yeah. So this is a new feature published 2 days ago. And let's remove justify content from the view. So we will have example below dynamic island. So you would typically need to import React Native safe area context and add additional hook and use inline styles. Not anymore. You can import Unistyles runtime, which is a host object, and I will explain it later, and you can use it directly in your style sheet. Simply Unistyles, simply you need to pass or type Unistyles runtime.inset, and you have everything there. How it will work? It will automatically go below the dynamic island, and we can even go further. So this is additional example. Here we have 4 views, and every view will show you the guidelines. It will work automatically, it's always up to date, and your app will be never covered by any of the hardware stuff. What about bigger screens? Let's say you have a client and you need to support web or desktop. Well, it's also easy. You can simply register breakpoints. You can add them here, so you can replace any value like string or number and replace it with the object, and you will have perfect intelligence about your breakpoints. So for small screens, you will have square because we have border radius 0, and for the landscape, you will have circle. What about even bigger screens? You can use media queries. React Native Unistyles exposes MQUtil, which stands for media queries, and you can build your media queries. Here you have only width from the breakpoint medium to 1000. You will have some kind of greenish color, and you can also use it with height. So it will be border radius 0 for height bigger than 500. How it works? We can show it with React Native Web. As you can see, there is no additional overhead. If you config it once, you have multiple benefits. What about variants? Each style key can also accept reserved word variants. Variant accepts group. For example, color. You may have multiple groups, there is no limit. So for example, here we have color. But you can have another group called size or whatever you want. Inside that, you can declare your variants like primary, secondary, outlined, and so on. Later, you can, for example, inject some kind of prop to React component and pass it to Unistyles hook, and it will automatically select your variant. If you don't pass anything, you can also define default variant. So how it works? You can build your components like typography, buttons, and so on. What about passing values from JSX? So here, I would like to make my box dynamic. So I define a prop called background color, and with the regular style sheet, it's not possible, but here you can simply type a function, call it, change the signature, accept background color, and that's all. it will magically work too. There is, of course, no memorization because I need to call this function each time. And for React Native Web, it will be resolved to the style tag. And last but not least, what about accessibility? React Native Unistyles exposes right now content size category. What is it? Well, if you have some kind of users with limited vision, they may change global font setting about the font size. So here, as you can see, for iOS, we have multiple of them, and you can access them directly right now. This is the first API in Unistyles about accessibility, but as you can see, there is more to come. If you want to learn more about Unistyles, you can visit new cool domain Unistyles and check this awesome unicorn designed by Magda, our graphic designer. But let's move further. Let's talk about universal styling. By universal, we actually mean that we can build our apps on multiple targets like iOS, Android, tablets, macOS, Windows, tvOS, web, server-side rendering for web, and even visionOS. We have a lot of platforms here. But what does it mean exactly? It means that you have a single code base and you have multiple targets. For example, it's iOS, Android, web. It's like the most common one. It's covered by Expo everywhere. And as far as I know, they're working on the tvOS support. But it may be something else, like iOS, Android, and visionOS. It depends on you. For web, we have React Native Web, and we have React Strict DOM. So they cover you for the web. But today, I will talk more about desktop. For me, it's the most important or most interesting part because here we have multiple options. We have React Native Web with Tauri. We have React Native Web with Electron. Yeah, you can run actually web app in the Electron and Tauri. But you also have React Native macOS and React Native Windows. So how to stay universal with Unistyles? As of now, as of today, Unistyles supports with Stylesheet, iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows. And with React Native Web, which is also Stylesheet API, web, and server-side rendering. I only miss tvOS and visionOS. But today I will focus on two of them. But wait, what about visionOS? I planned to add support last month, and I planned it even this week, but then Oscar from CallStack made a tweet that he added support for multi-window API. And I thought, damn, Unistyles can't work with multiple windows, so I need to postpone it a little bit. I need to figure it out. But yeah, I will definitely add support for visionOS too. Before we jump into the code, I would like to also explain one more topic, which is host object. Host object is a mysterious term. I didn't understand it too, but imagine that you have two words. You have JavaScript with React Native, and you have C++. And between them, there is something called JSI. You can construct, for example, object, JavaScript object, totally in C++. You can also create a function, and you can pass it to JavaScript, the same with the function. And if your user will access some kind of property, you will actually call a code on the C++ side. Same with the function. If user will invoke the function, it will literally invoke a function in C++. It's done with global. So for the web, we have window object. For Node.js and React, we have global. We can access some C++ host object stuff with the global. And for me, it's like a ping pong because you can't catch the ball. It's either on the C++ side or JavaScript side. Now, Unistyles was built with shared core built in C++. Like I was figuring it out to add support for multiple platforms. And one more time, we have JSI, which communicates with the C++, and we have React Native, so you know that. But actually, you have also JSI or Objective-C++ with JSI or JNI with Kotlin or Java that communicates too with the C++ core. And you have platform-specific code and APIs. So imagine that you have event, like one of your users changed the orientation from portrait to landscape. So there is a device event on orientation change. I can actually call it C++ core via JSI and update the value. And later I can, for example, build Unistyles runtime, pass it the updated value, and move it to React Native. And the same goes the other way. So we have action, like your user changes the theme. Yeah? I can also call literally C++ function and update the Unistyles runtime. So that's how Unistyles runtime is always up to date. Again, moving back to the platform-specific code, I would like to start with the React Native macOS. Is it hard to add support for React Native macOS to your React Native library? Well, it's not. You just need to add one more line to the podspec file that indicates that you are supporting macOS, and then you have some kind of iOS-specific code, yeah, because you have your native module, and you need to right now cover the macOS specific code. And by default, you can do that with preprocessor directives, but you will have a lot of ifs in your code. So what I prefer is to create two files. One will be responsible for the iOS code, and the second one for the macOS code. And they can talk with native module with Unistyles. But you may ask, why do I need two files? Is that hard to add additional support for macOS? Well, it's not that hard, but here, for example, I read the initial screen width and height. And this is code for the iOS. So we have UI screen. But for macOS, there is no UI screen. So we need to figure it out. You can access frame with size from NS window. So as you can see, you can't mix iOS with macOS. They look similar, but you need to divide them to files or to use these ifs. And for example, for the iOS to listen for content size category changes, you can use this notification center listener. But for macOS, there is no listener. So as you can see, adding support for multiple platforms sometimes is tedious because you need to figure out how to listen to something, or how to update something, or how to access something. But overall, for macOS, it's pretty easy. If you find yourself with iOS code, you can easily jump to macOS. What about React Native Windows? Well, that's the different story. You need to start with the React Native Windows init tool to generate your native module. So you don't need to create anything by yourself from scratch. There is a command, and it will generate you a Windows folder. And the most important part here is React Native Unistyles solution. Solution is like a project, so you can open it with Visual Studio Code. Now, native code for React Native Windows is a little bit different than for iOS or for Android. We also have a macros, like here you have a React module, and there is a struct, yeah, so you can easily replace struct with class. It's the same, it's like the privacy, is only about the privacy. But here we have a struct. And by default, React Native Windows will expose one more macro, React init. So it's like a constructor. It's not like a C++ constructor per se, but that's a constructor in React Native Windows. And here you will get React Native context. And of course, you can use synchronous methods, asynchronous methods, and so on. So that's the bare bone of the native module for Windows. Yeah. Now, there is one caveat. When you try to build your first module with React Native Windows, it will work, and then it will break. And why is that? I left a comment in the React Native Unistyles repository. So it seems that while you are debugging or building your native module, they will inject your native module with native modules. But if you are in release mode or you are not debugging, they will inject turbo module. So that was interesting for me. So here we have turbo module, and here we have native module. So I had to create additional file, Unistyles module.windows.typescript, to actually cover this case. What about sending events? Well, you have one more macro, and here, as a second argument of your module macro, you can pass a name of your emitter. So if you don't do that, you will actually trigger an event to everyone. So everyone from React Native can listen to your events. But here you can be more specific and mention Unistyles. Now, you need to declare your function with additional macro, React event. The first argument is the name of the function, and the second argument is the event that will be called in the JavaScript. And right now, you can call it however you want, from whatever you want in the C++. Now, the last part that took me too long is how to get JSI runtime in React Native Windows. It's not that easy. I had to dig into the React Native Windows code and find this mystic function, try, get, or create context runtime. And from where you will get JSR runtime, and if it's available, you can get JSR runtime. And later you can install your host object, inject something to global, and make everyone happy with always up-to-date Unistyles runtime. So, what's next? How do I see Unistyles in the next few months? For sure, I need to add support for React Native Vision OS with multiple windows and React Native tvOS. I would like to be fully multi-platform and universal. I would like to add more accessibility APIs. I know that we don't like it as developers. We don't like to add accessibility, but I hope I will make it easy for you. As Kasper mentioned, soon we will use bridgeless mode, so I need to also cover that. I'm also looking into compound variants. Compound variants is like extended variants. We can add additional condition when, for example, size is large and color is primary, we can inject additional styles. Custom compiler for web. And right now, I'm wondering about React strict DOM. Is it necessary to build own compiler? Can I use it? I need to explore it. I would like to also manage UI. You don't need to install like a ton of libraries to manage orientation, navigation bars, status bars. Maybe, and I think I will do it, I will allow you to modify whatever you see on the native side with Unistyles. I need to also explore static styles for server-side rendering. Right now, it's not like they are still dynamic, and I would like to drop JavaScript totally and return you perfect CSS. And, of course, move more code to JSI, C++. For me, it's a cool adventure. And let's move back to the Unistyles mountain. Here, I dropped Expo and Chrome debugger, and I know it's not possible anymore. I implemented only this amount of the functionality, but I know that there is also a lot of place to improve it, to add new APIs, and I'm happy about that. Thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter and GitHub with the same handle.